everybody, and welcome to the PASA Technology Committee webinar on use of social media. This is the second of a series of webinars that the committee will sponsor and host to try to provide some knowledge and skills about various aspects of using technology to assist you in performing your roles as district leaders. So we look forward to an exciting, informative session this morning. With that, I'll turn it over to the chair of the PASA Technology Committee, Randy Sigenfuss. Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for setting all this up, and thanks to Charlie and Nicole for being our guests today to talk about social media for advocacy. So we are pleased to introduce today's participants, Charlie Lyons, owner of Shelley Lyons Public Affairs and Communications, and Nicole Magala, Director of Community Relations and Development in the Parkland School District. And I will also be participating with some comments near the end. Before introducing our guests, you can be a part of the conversation on Google Hangouts on Air by asking questions. You should be able to click on a link on screen at any time to enter your questions, or you can also tweet out questions using the hashtag PASA social media. The format of today's webinar will include remarks from each of the panelists followed by a Q&A session. Now to introduce our guest panelists. Charlie Lyons is owner of Shelley Lyons Public Affairs and Communications, a full-service strategic communications firm that provides media relations, advocacy, campaign management, grassroots development and coordination, issues management, and crisis communications. Among his projects is management of the Campaign for Fair Education Funding, a coalition of more than 50 organizations dedicated to ensuring that resources are available so all children in Pennsylvania can succeed academically no matter where they live. Prior to joining Shelley Lyons in 2011, he spent more than 2 decades in state and federal government and in the private sector as an attorney and public policy consultant. He was state director for U.S. Senator Bob Casey Jr. and served as the senator's transition director following his 2006 election. Earlier, he spent several years as a consultant on a wide range of issues in Pennsylvania and across the country. He was senior aide to Governor Robert P. Casey, serving as policy director, executive assistant to the governor, and ultimately as chief of staff. Before joining state government, he was an attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice and holds a JD degree from the George Washington University School of Law. So welcome, Charlie. After we hear from Charlie, we're going to hear from Nicole Magala. Nicole is Director of Community Relations and Development at Parkland School District, where she's the Chief School District Communications Professional and responsible for bringing $350,000 of alternative revenue to the district in the form of marketing and advertising sponsorship and funds for the Parkland School District Education Foundation. Prior to joining Parkland in February of 2006, Ms. Magala served as the Director of Public Relations at Pocono Mountain School District, and before her tenure in school PR, Ms. Magala held several corporate public relations and marketing positions. She is a Pittsburgh native and holds a bachelor's degree from NYU. All right, so excited to have these 2 panelists today, and let's start with Charlie. It's all yours.
Thank you, Randy, and let me tee up some slides for everyone. And I think I've there we go. No, sorry, I'm want to make sure I have the slide sort of worked out. While I'm doing that, let me get started. So as Randy mentioned, our firm manages the Campaign for Fair Education Funding, and it is 50+ organizations. It includes labor, advocacy groups, associations like PASA, PASBO, some clergy groups like POWER, other organizations, Pennsylvania Business Council, which actually just merged with another group, but they were a major business organization that was has been a major player, and It is dedicated to two things. One, adopting a fair funding formula, and we endorse the Basic Education Funding Commission report and recommendation to fairly distribute funding across school districts. That was accomplished in the form of legislation that was passed within the last couple of months, and it is we now just have to make sure that formula stays intact. There's a 5-year timeline on it before it is reviewed according to the legislation. But we're pleased to see that was passed, and now we have to stick with it. But the second important piece is to invest in that formula and increase dollars, because as you're probably aware, the dollars, the formula is only being used for additional dollars over the 2014-15 budget cycle, so we need to see a significant investment going through that formula over the next several years. And so how do we get our message out? We conduct research and we promote research that others do to support the need for fair funding and adequate funding. We educate, directly engage lawmakers, a combination education and lobbying, and we do that primarily through our members' organizations. We try to generate press coverage. We do public events, we issue releases, reports, etc., op-eds. And then we try to mobilize our member organizations and their networks to act, whether it be calls to legislators, visits, and social media. So how does social media fit in? First, we use it to try to get the attention of elected officials or other policymakers. And there was a study done, and it's actually done every year, I think, by a group, a foundation that works with Congress, and they did a study of congressional offices. I think the numbers probably be similar to what you'd see on the state level, although I would suspect that the congressional involvement in social media is probably higher generally than state government, but I'm not basing that on anything more than the fact that Congress, I know, has definitely embraced it for several years. But so 97% of Congress follows social media. A survey of the offices said that when they see multiple constituents from the same group who are echoing the same concern, they tend to listen. And you don't have to post a lot of social media on the same topic to get their attention. And I think we found that, as somebody who worked in a Senate office, the traditional way was phone calls or maybe emails. But if you tended to get 10, 15, 20 phone calls, particularly some of those district offices, they paid attention. And so it's interesting to see that you don't need much more to get people's attention on social media. Also, trying to get the attention of reporters. There are a couple of headlines that are striking, and these are years old, but I think they're still informative. Headline in 2011, most journalists shun social media and blogs. By 2013, it became the new normal, and journalists were using social media and Twitter to get their news. I would say that survey has not been done. At least I could not locate updated surveys beyond that, but I think it's safe to say that that 59% number is much higher today. And so when you look at social media app like Twitter, which is what I'm focusing on for simplicity given the timeline we have, you definitely, all the reporters that I think we are interested in trying to get a hold of are on Twitter, and you follow them, and you also try to push things out and get it in front of them. And there's two aspects to that. One is they use it as a way of gathering information, but they also, and this can be good news or bad news, if a reporter is working on a few different stories, particularly, and I'll use the example of the Harrisburg Capitol newsroom, where there may be 3 or 4 things going on and they only have time to write on 1 or 2, they will often, if you send them a press release or a report or something similar, if they don't have time to write a full article, they may tweet it or otherwise, or blog about it, but they may tweet it with a link to your report. And that, it's not as good as maybe being in the paper, but it's, before Twitter, that report would have just gone on a shelf and wouldn't have been out. So there are a couple of opportunities with reporters and the press to use social media. And then the other important component of social media, to what we do in an advocacy campaign across many different organizations, is to use that to expand the network, to make sure that it's another opportunity for our members to see what's happening, to get information in front of them, and to mobilize them to try to act. So it's sharing of information, it's calls to action, which I'll talk a little bit about and show in a minute. So I'm going to use Twitter as the prime user. Facebook has many more, well, I think 1.5 billion worldwide, and that is also an important social media app to use. There's others that are, Instagram has many. It's very widely used, particularly among young people, but to the extent it is not used for advocacy as much at the moment as Twitter and Facebook are. LinkedIn is another one that is maybe 100 million users, but it's a professional network, so depending on the audience you're looking for, that's another opportunity. But in terms of Twitter, as the slide projects, the good news is it's got more than 300 million active users, and there's 500 million tweets going out every day. So the reach is great. The bad news is 300 million active users, 500 million tweets. There's a lot of competition. You really need to try to cut through. So some tips, there's plenty of other tips, and there's even differing opinions on certain aspects of this, but you want to be clear and concise and compelling. So you have to be concise anyway, because it's a 140 character limit on Twitter, but there's been research done to show that the sweet spot tends to be a smaller amount, anywhere from 100 to 130 characters, not words, characters. And you want to keep it simple. If you're, one of the keys, and particularly if you're just dipping your toes in the water of social media and Twitter, you don't have to do a lot of original thinking, to be honest. If you see something that you think is a pretty compelling article or other piece of news, you can just take the headline of that article, put that in as your message in the Twitter, in the tweet rather, and link to that article. And it's pretty simple. You have to figure the people doing the headlines know what they're talking about in terms of grabbing attention, and you can just link and tweet the headline and get the word out. There's all kinds of tips about using verbs, action verbs, superlatives, exclamation points, all these things that you can try as you go forward. These things are and we'll get to the measuring social media and Twitter's impact. It is measured down to the character, and so you can get a lot of feedback in terms of what seems to be working. Another important piece is to ask for action, to engage, and this is particularly the case when you want to expand and engage your membership and the network of people you have following you, is ask them to perhaps retweet or call a legislator or shoot an email out, or the simpler the action, maybe the better as you're building. But asking for action has shown to be something that gets people to respond. Apologize, because I don't know, people may have varying levels of Twitter knowledge and use it in different ways, so I'm not sure what level here to go in, but hashtags, which are used to allow people to follow a particular topic, they're important because people tend to, again, click onto something that has a hashtag more than without, and it allows you to expand your reach beyond your network. So if you have a network of followers, they're going to be getting your tweets when you tweet out. But by putting a hashtag on, someone who's particularly interested in that issue, even though they're not a follower, will be able to click on that hashtag and your tweet will come up. So that's an important addition. So here's an example, and this is one, we don't do a lot of these because this is capital letters and exclamation points, but it's an ask, but it's straightforward, and we have hashtags, and this kind of has an example of something we did recently with the legislature taking up the budget.
Hey, Charlie, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
The slides appear to be stuck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're actually stuck back towards the beginning, so you may want to unconnect screen share and then reconnect to where you currently are.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay, we see you.
Okay.
And now, if your screen is showing the slide where you're talking, your current slide that you're talking about,
Okay.
go back to screen share.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah, I think we were stuck on slide number 3.
Okay, you know what? I think when I went to the
Okay,
when I went, you got it now?
it's moving forward. Yes.
All right. You know what? When I went to a different the slideshow, I think it went off. So I'm just gonna. You may see the other slides on the side, but I think it's safer to keep this one. So
it's moving. So that's good. Thank you.
All right. So I'm just gonna go through. And this will be available, right, Jim, for folks.
Mm-hmm.
So I had mentioned Congress and the press and mobilization aspects, and so this is the example that I was talking about of a tweet that includes a lot of the different components we talked about. We just sent it out recently to try to mobilize people on more funding for the current budget through the new formula. And so another tip is to try to use images. There's lots of research to show, and we found this to be the case. When we started adding more infographics, photos, and other images to our tweets, we got a better response, and it was memorable. Even among the members, 50+ members of the organizations and their staffs, when you say, how do you think we're doing? Love the, images, love the infographics and so on. It makes a big difference. And I say that not just from the statistics that are done on it, but from personal reaction. So, here's an example of when the formula was passed and we wanted to pivot to the amount of money that is needed to go through it. We created this infographic to show the impact in a classroom of how much money is spent in the lowest spending districts in the state and the highest spending. And did it with a chalkboard, try to be a memorable image, try to keep it relatively simple and straightforward. You don't need to create your own infographics. Here's something we did with the recent PASA PASBO survey. We simply cut and pasted one of the graphs from the report with PASA and PASBO's permission, of course, and we posted that onto the website. I'm adding this just as an example. You can do the same thing in Facebook. You have the luxury of being able to be a little bit more verbose, if you will, and you don't have to worry about the limit. You obviously want to be concise anyway, but here was an opportunity to explain to people The Senate passed this funding bill. It's in the House now, and then we had an infographic, which is one of the more detailed of infographics that we put together that actually goes into detail about what the formula is. But even for those that didn't need to go into that detail, we had a link for people to go and send a message to their state rep to pass the bill that the Senate had passed. So other tips, you can tag who you're targeting. So you have to be careful about this, but if you want to get the attention of, say, Governor Wolf, you can put at Governor Tom Wolf, and it will, show up on his feed, and his staff will see it. It's a great thing to do if you want to thank somebody, because they'll tend to retweet it, because flattery will get you everywhere. You might want to be careful if you're being more critical, and you have to make a decision. Do you want to, publicly take on a legislator? But if you're thanking them, certainly, and if you're urging them to take action, that's usually okay. You just have to be careful with the tone. And then there's all kinds of research done on timing. But, a lot of research says afternoons are best for tweeting, but it really is different based on your audience. In some cases, it may be end of the day is helpful, weekends, midday. It really depends, and I'll explain a little bit about measurements, and you can really test it with your audience to see which texts at what times end up getting the best results. Spread out your tweets. If you like one way you can do it is you want to tweet out a bunch of articles in the morning that you think are of interest to your audience. You're better doing it over a period of time rather than like sending out 4 tweets in a row. Every hour or even less if you're not sending a lot of tweets out. Don't be afraid to repeat tweets over time. So these tweets, again, people are getting a lot of tweets. They may not see them all. They may not remember. But you could send one out Monday and send the same thing out with the same article a few days later, if it's that important and you're getting a good response. And there are tools to map out a schedule for your tweets. So when you're, so you don't have to be, tied to your computer screen or your phone if you want to put tweets out during the day. We use something called Twittimer, but it allows you to time tweets. You could set them up and program what time you want these different tweets to go out. It's fairly simple to do once you get started. But there's plenty of opportunities to do that. And then we've talked about measurement, and there's so many ways to measure. You can measure your growth in followers. You could measure your click-through rate, meaning, if you're including a link, how many people are clicking on the link. On Twitter, you can like a tweet. You can retweet with or without comments. You could reply publicly to the person who is tweeting. So there's many, and all those can be measured. And there's different, either through Twitter, different apps that you can use to measure all those actions. And then there's conversion rate, which sometimes isn't quite as easy. And I use conversion rate to be the broadest sense, meaning if you're asking them to take action, did they? If you ask them to retweet, you can measure that. If you ask them to call the legislator, you can't do it through Twitter. There may be others, but other ways to do that through your own processes. But it's helpful if you can do that. You'll be able to measure the impact of the tweets you're doing, so you can decide timing, content, etc. I'm sorry, I want to get through this quickly, so I spoke quickly. But on the slides, we have, if you have questions, you can contact us. And of course, we have the information to follow the campaign. I should add Carolyn Myers, who's listed here, is kind of the architect of a lot of the social media work we do, including the infographics. And we've also worked with other members of the organizations, or member organizations, to kind of build this up. And I would add, don't be afraid to talk to other people about how they handle their social media as well. So I hope that's helpful to everybody, and happy to ask questions later on, or answer questions later on.
All right, great. Thanks, Charlie. Lots of good tips in there. The idea of coming up with an appropriate hashtag, the PA legislature hashtag, adding an image too. I think we're definitely a visual society, and that definitely grabs people. And the idea of tagging our representatives, tagging the governor. That's a quick, easy way, I think, to get some some tweets out that are going to advocate for the things that we want and the things that we need in public education. So thanks for sharing a lot of rich things in that presentation. The presentation, Charlie's presentation, is available at the short link bit.ly/PASA social media. And you can access that now and anytime after this presentation. And also, if you have any questions, you can tweet them out at PASA social media, or if you want to leave comments, if you can get to the comments on the YouTube stream that's going now, we'll have a follow-up shortly. So now I'd like to turn over to the second part of the presentation today to Nicole Magala, who's going to speak about social media for advocacy from the public relations perspective.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. So when Randy first called me, I was thinking about advocacy. Why is he choosing me for advocacy? And then I thought it didn't take me long to get to the point where everything I do is advocating. I'm the communications person for a district of 9,200 students, and I'm advocating every day for the kids. I'm advocating every day for public education, and I'm advocating for student activities. I'm showing people the possibilities that public education can provide. We frequently highlight the great things our alumni are doing, and always are talking about the great things our students are doing. And you know, one topic I think, well, first of all, I think it's hard for people that are sitting and representing the school district, because I'm always tweeting out from Parkland School District, and my Facebook page is Parkland School District. My tweet is at Parkland Schools. So I'm more of an anonymous social media poster, I guess you could say, but I am the sole person that's posting on behalf of the district, and I try to post things every day. So one message I think that resonates clearly about advocacy that a lot of superintendents have been focusing on this year is just the sheer cost of school choice. So as our charter school and cyber school tuition payments are hitting the $3 million mark for the upcoming school year, that's a major talking point for us as we talk about budget. And I think that as public relations and professionals and superintendents, we just constantly have to be reminding our community about what our obstacles are. You know, something else that we advocate for regularly in our district communication is unfunded mandates. So our list has grown, and I think there's a document that you're probably all familiar with that's been circulating for years about the decades in education and how many mandates have been added over the decades, and almost all of the mandates really have been unfunded. So how that falls back onto the local taxpayer. So those were just some key messages that I was thinking about whenever you know, he asked me to talk about using social media for advocacy. And I really thought, you know, every tweet that I put out and every message that I post on Facebook is advocating for our children and the opportunities that public education provides. So I just want to follow up on a couple things that Charlie mentioned. I have, I think we're going to be posting this document to a folder whenever this is over, but I have some links that might be helpful. And one of them is an article. It's called 10 Free Tools to Create Infographics. And there's all kinds of free websites out there that let you create pretty instant, quick, nice-looking infographics to post with your messages. So that makes my job really easy. One of my favorite websites is called Canva, CANVA.com, and I create all kinds of graphics all the time from that site. And I use it to post on my district website, posts, news posts, and I also use it all the time for Facebook and Twitter. Then there's another link that I'm going to share in that document. It's called Infographic Marketing, and it just kind of talks to you about the reasons why you want to use infographics. It'll expand upon some of the statistics that Charlie already provided. And then the other thing I just wanted to talk about was timing. I think that absolutely is something that you'll start seeing happen. I think I was at about a year and a half ago, the district was at about 1,000 followers on our Facebook page. Now we're up to almost 3,000. And I think I really tried to start thinking about what were the compelling messages. So I'll just give you a couple of my favorite highlights from the past year that helped create a whole bunch more followers for us as a school district. So many of you who live on the eastern side of the state probably remember the blizzard that occurred in January, where we got 36 inches of snow over the weekend. And it forced us to close schools for many days. And so by Tuesday night, after being snowed in since Friday night, people were really getting itchy, wondering when we were going to be opening. So we had a school board meeting that night, and the superintendent announced publicly, we're planning for an on-time opening tomorrow. I took the liberty to immediately tweet that out, and it was much appreciated by so many people, and it was forwarded by thousands of people, I think, and I think that was just a nice way to use social media. Other times I've used it to build followers, or I think all of you probably work with local newspapers who are now really publishing huge photo albums. So when we have something like graduation or the prom, the local newspaper is there, and they're taking wonderful professional pictures and posting these massive photo albums. So I always use that as an opportunity to retweet. And the other things that I'm finding are some of our high school students are picking up and following the school district. So as the local paper is congratulating an athlete or a science award winner, I'll constantly retweet that. I think that what Charlie said about following the reporters that cover you, that's an excellent thing to do. I know all of the reporters that cover my school district are following me on Twitter, and I frequently like to see what they're writing about, and they many times will retweet something that I put out there from the school district, so that's a really nice partnership. And then just going back quickly to the timing of the events. So I usually post in the evening, because there's a lot of research that say that a lot of people are checking Twitter at night, kind of after the workday is over. But there's other times where you just think about the timing and it may not be the right thing. So last Tuesday was our graduation, and we streamed graduation live. And so instead of tweeting that out the night before, I decided to tweet it at 12:30 in the afternoon, knowing that graduation was occurring that evening. And that reach that day was 5,000 people. So I knew that a lot of people picked it up, and a lot of people ended up using the link, and it gave them time, a couple hours where they were thinking about graduation because it was that day, and they were forwarding it to a lot of people. So just trying to capitalize on sort of whatever might be going on for that particular day has been helpful for me. And then the last link that I'm posting in the document is actually a recent study by the Pew Research Center that 62% of people are getting their news now from social media. So I think if you can take the time to read through that report, it's pretty eye-opening. And I guess you would, I don't know if you would consider this social media, but I guess I would. I'd just like to share this because it's something I learned at a conference a couple months ago. But there's something called SKIM, S-K-I-M-M, and you can subscribe to it. And these two women started this company in 2015, I believe. And it gives you your day, kind of everything you need to know for the water cooler for the day. And it's so well written and so clever, and it's actually hilarious. So I love reading that every day, and I've been amazed to see how these two women have been able to grow this SKIM news resource across the country in such a short period of time. So so check that out, and maybe you'll like picking that up and reading that too. Okay.
All right. So thank you, Nicole. Again, some really interesting information from the perspective of public relations, particularly like the idea of looking at advocacy from a broad perspective too. That while Charlie focused on the policy end, and a lot of the tips and tricks still apply to the things that we want to advocate for in schools across the board. The idea of the infographics, check out those resources. We put everything, all the resources for today online. You can get them at bit.ly/PASA social media, and PASA is all caps and social media is lowercase. And also the tips to get followers for our audience. If you're just starting out with social media using Facebook or Twitter, you have to find some ways to get your constituents, your stakeholders, to follow those accounts, and Nicole gave us some good examples there. And the idea of connecting with the media. When you are doing some things within your school and advocating for the work that your students are doing, send out some tweets and tag those media outlets as well. I just wanted to wrap up the sort of panel discussion here, sharing some things that I have done as I switch here to my desktop. If I can do that. There we go. From a superintendent's perspective, and using social media, I'm sort of thinking at it. Give me a second here, just switching over. Okay. Okay, you should see my screen, okay? Good. So, I'm thinking about advocacy too as a superintendent from a broad perspective. So I want to engage a lot of different stakeholders using different social media tools, and it seems like Twitter is the easy on-ramp for many superintendents, but also Facebook from an organizational perspective is an easy place to get a lot of traffic, and I think it's also probably the predominant place where most of our stakeholders reside. So I just wanted to share briefly here. This was a blog post that I wrote a while back, thinking about this idea of why superintendents should be involved in using Twitter. And many of these ideas that I was thinking about back then were shared already by Charlie and Nicole. So just to quickly run through some of these things, and then we can open it up for some questions. Engaging with your constituents, and your constituents are on social media, and this is something that's definitely changed even in the last 5 years. More and more of our parents, our citizens, our community members, this is where they reside. This is where, when they've got a few minutes, they go online and they want to know, what are the stories, what are the things that are happening not only in our school but in our world. And so, you know, as a part of their lives, and as school leaders, we can start to push out and advocate, push out stories and advocate for many of the good things that are going on in our schools. So one of the good reasons is that's just where our stakeholders are residing. The second reason that I was thinking of was engaging policymakers, and Charlie certainly has shared a lot of information about ways that we can impact public education through connecting directly with our representatives and advocating for the things that we value most. From the role of the superintendent, connect with your professional organizations. Use social media to engage them, but also to follow their accounts too. Organizations like PASA and the National School Leader Organization, AASA, as well as PSBA and all sorts of professional organizations have these social media accounts, whether they're Twitter accounts or Facebook pages. If you want to engage with them, those are some ways too that you can learn some things, as well as potentially advocate, because they are oftentimes advocating for us as well. Another reason is to network with other superintendents, both locally and nationally. There's actually a hashtag called SoupChat, and you can post information and share information there and advocate for education using that hashtag from the superintendent perspective. But they also have Twitter chats once a month, the first Wednesday of the month at 8 o'clock in the evening Eastern Time, and they're usually a series of questions, and it's a good opportunity to engage around advocacy and social media issues, as well as public education issues with colleagues and other educational leaders. Not everybody has to be a superintendent to participate in that chat, but it's another way to use social media to engage and advocate with your peers. And the next one is model being a lead learner in your organization. And this is one of the things that I spend a lot of my time doing, not only going out into the schools and tweeting out photos and little short videos that you can now do on Twitter of things that happen within our schools, but also if I'm if we're confronted with a problem and I'm looking to find a solution for that, I can certainly tap into my face-to-face network, but how do I model that through social media and technology? We now have access to a whole host of information and minds out there that we can tap into. So how do I, as a school leader, model that using this social media, not only to advocate for my organization, but to connect with others to help solve some of our problems and challenges that we have? And the last thing that I was thinking about was using social media to build a brand, and that could be your personal brand, and certainly it can be your organizational brand, like Nicole talked about earlier. In terms of a personal brand, as a superintendent, there's a hashtag called a super day, and it happens once a month, and it's usually I believe it's the third Wednesday of the month. And the idea is to tweet out as a superintendent the various things that happen during your day, to not only advocate for the role of the superintendency and the things that we do and how we do advocate for our organizations, but also to tweet out and advocate for some of the things that are happening within your schools. So if you're interested in that bit of advocacy, you can check out a super day. That's one of the hashtags on Twitter. So the link to this post, as well as a follow-up post that I did on more of the sort of nuts and bolts of using Twitter, the what and the how, will be available in those resources. So now, let me go back and let me unshare this. There we go. And those are just some examples from a superintendent's perspective of how you might use some of these social media tools for advocacy, some of the things I've been thinking about. So I don't know if we have any questions. I don't know if the Q&A of this YouTube on air or Google Hangouts on air was actually working. I don't know if I see any questions. So maybe we'll conclude this for now, and I'd like to thank Charlie and Nicole for your participation today, and thanks also to Jim Buckheit, Executive Director of PASA, for organizing this webinar, and all the members of the Technology Committee too. The Technology Committee works to sort of brainstorm these ideas and contact our panelists and help inform our membership of the various aspects of social media and how they can use them. So links and the presentation shared today, again, are accessible online at bit.ly/PASA social media, and PASA is caps and social media is lowercase. There you will also find the link to review this presentation once it is edited, as well as our earlier presentation on legal issues and social media that we had earlier this month with Attorney Mark Walls. So I'll turn it over to Jim now to do any kind of wrap-up.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Charlie, for really informative, insightful information that I think benefits everybody. I learned some new things today, so thank you. We will be, this is a recorded webinar that we will be sharing, so if you miss something that you would like to review or review it again or share it with colleagues, we'll be providing the link with cleaned up a little bit, so some of the introductory pieces and other pieces are edited out, so it makes it a little more fast. And with the link that Randy provided, all those wonderful resources and tools and information are there as well. So thank you all. We'll be looking forward to doing more of these events in the fall. So with that, we'll sign off. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.